At my father's funeral, my brother demanded all the inheritance because he's the biological son, and I'm just my mom's child from a previous marriage. I said, "0K, I have renounced it, but never contact me for the rest of your life no matter what." He smirked and said, "Like I ever would." 3 months later, "The inheritance is all mine. Dad would definitely be happier if his son would inherit it, instead of some woman who's not related by blood. You're not my sister anymore, I'm cutting ties with you," my brother said with a sneering smile. Indeed, to our father. I was not related by blood, as I was my mother's child from a previous relationship. Still, he loved me as his own daughter, which made him very special to me. I felt angry that my brother wanted to monopolize everything our father left. But I was relieved by his words about cutting ties. Fine by me. In return, once you inherit, don't ever contact me again. Like I'd ever do that. Don't expect any money from me later, not even a penny. I am Kelly, a 29-year-old civil servant. My brother Steve is 22 and just graduated from university this year. He often brags about his company being more famous and successful than the rural city office where I work. Must be Dad's genes, right? I've got the blood of a dad who worked for a major corporation. Yeah, very impressive. Steve often brings up the matter of inheriting our father's traits. Although we share the same mother, we have different fathers. Steve is the child of our current father and mother, while I am the child of my mother and her ex-husband. Although I'm technically a stepchild, Dad never despised me for it and cared for me deeply. I don't really remember my real father much, as he ran away with his affair partner when I was little. Thus, I regard my current dad as my true father. When Steve was younger, he never mentioned that I was a stepchild, or that we had a different father. However, when I was an adult and he was still in middle school, our mother died in a car accident. Unable to cope without blaming someone, Steve convinced himself that it was my fault. At the funeral, he cried out, "Why did Mom have to die? It would have been better if it were you." No one would be troubled if the step-sibling were gone, no matter how shocked he was. Being told such things made me lose any affection I had for my brother. I wanted to argue back at such a harsh statement, but our father, who I had never seen so angry, scolded Steve fiercely, so I chose to remain silent. Naturally, my relationship with Steve deteriorated. Initially, he tried to surpass me academically but aiming too high. He failed to get into his first-choice schools for both high school and university. He couldn't out-earn me either, as I was a full-time employee, and he was just a student part-time worker. There were plenty of other fields like sports or arts where he could have competed. But fearing failure, he stopped taking any challenges. As blood relation was an undeniable fact, he thought he could dominate by poking at that without any need for effort. Eventually, Steve just kept mocking me for being a stepchild, and not the real child of our father. It was probably just misplaced anger from losing our mother at first. But as he grew up, he genuinely started to believe. Dad and I are the real family, and the sister is an outsider. As my sister is a stepchild, I have a higher standing than her. I grew tired of dealing with such a selfish brother. He would provoke unilaterally, lose by his own measures, and get angry. I got so exhausted dealing with him that I started to dismiss him carelessly. When Steve chose to commute to university from home, I moved out to live alone in an apartment. When I would come back home, I made sure to coordinate with Dad to visit when Steve wasn't around. 4 years later, Steve graduated from university and managed to get a job at a fairly renowned local company. I had prepared a tie as a graduation gift. Of course, I got a job at a much better and more famous company than the city office where you work as a civil servant, because I have the blood of a dad who works for a major corporation. His character apparently hadn't changed even in 4 years at university. I decided against giving him the gift. I continued to live alone and commute to work, while he lived with our father, and faced the rough waves of society as a new working adult. That lifestyle didn't last even a year before Dad suddenly fell ill. There were no signs when we talked on the phone the night before. He passed away so suddenly that I didn't even have time to say goodbye. At the funeral, I served as the chief mourner. And thanks to Dad's prior arrangements about what was needed, and which procedures to follow, everything except the inheritance was smoothly handled. The problem was the inheritance. The only living inheritors were Steve and me. I had a feeling that discussing it would inevitably lead to conflict. I found some documents about the inheritance in Dad's room, but I knew they wouldn't be followed exactly.